that good? All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks so. So just to repeat, we'll call the meeting to order. It is Monday, November the 20th at 7:42 a.m. With that, we'll ask for a roll call.
Snyder,
Here.
Harvey,
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Wallace. White. So,
We do not have someone for invocation today, so we'll have a moment of silence. With a moment of silence, let's give a pledge of allegiance to our flag. Vicky, can I ask you to lead?
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next order of business is to approve the agenda for today.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Then so moved and second to approve the agenda for today. That being said, let's move to public comment.
All in favor? All in favor.
Benita? Yeah, all in favor of approval of the agenda.
Aye.
Um,
Opposed? None. Ayes have it.
ayes have it, the unanimous votes. We will have public comment by way of Zoom. There's no one in the gallery seated today, so we can go to the Zoom and see if there's anyone that wants to have a public comment.
Don't have any hands up right now.
That being said, we can move forward. And item 5 is to discuss and approve the Economic Development Corporation Handbook that I think all of you have. And
See who's online, please.
we've been working to get this done, and it is done. And is there a motion to approve the handbook?
Just got a hand up.
I'm sorry.
So that's Kevin. He probably is there to answer questions if you need for the handbook.
So do I need the opening?
You can allow, but I think Mr. Harvey was just in the middle of asking for a motion for this topic, so you have to wait.
Okay. Sorry.
The discussion or
So
to
you-
move forward with the approval of a handbook. We've been working on this for a while.
So I'm sorry, Clark, did you make the motion? Was there a second?
Do I hear a second? I'll second the motion.
Now discussion. Anybody have discussion?
Any discussion on the handbook?
So I was reading in, and I was trying to find it. And I think at one point I read like all of this supersedes anything that was ever. Yeah. Supersedes and replaces all previous policies, procedures.
What page you on?
It's actually on number 1.
Okay.
Are there other written policies that we have in place? I mean, is that? I'm just wondering, like, do we already have written policies in place? And I was wondering if it would be good to see what we've already had in place to see if what we have in front of us kind of falls in lines, or is it a total deviation from what we've already had in place? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'll answer that question.
Answer.
As I'm returning to the role, after having been out, I always discover new things. So as of right now, I can tell you, I'm not aware of a previous handbook for the EDC. Any other policies or procedures were never very well documented. So I haven't been able to find, in my experience, usually there's a handful of policies or procedures at an organization where you can find them with a bulleted outline index. I haven't been able to find that. So anything we do have has been word of mouth or the way, we've always managed it. Going forward, all of those policies will be indexed so that we don't have any more confusion. So I would say we have very little that's in writing at this point, but we will attach all moving forward and we'll bring it to the board to adopt.
So right now we haven't been able to find any previous documented.
So maybe you could be more specific because I don't want to fall into a rabbit hole.
No, I was just wondering, typically when we had an organization, there are policies, procedures in place for employees. So there's nothing that we've been able to get our hands on right now.
So I think you're well aware, and if you're asking to just make it clear that in the bylaws, it says without any other policy or procedure that you look to the city
Mhm.
to their particular
No,
handbook.
Kevin, I know.
But what I did find out was the handbook was submitted from the city back in July or August. I don't know when, but it hadn't really come to the EDC as a document. I did ask my one staff member to assign that last week because I realized it hadn't happened. So that's the closest thing we've had. But everything else is we're trying to move to a situation where we're really managing as we have sort of been trying to accomplish. So that the things that are specific to the city handbook that don't apply to us, just we're not there to kind of work around them. So
Yeah, no, and I get it. And that's not kind of what I was trying to get at. I was just wondering, like, from our previous CEOs, there was nothing else in writing about employee policies or anything like that.
I remember being in a meeting about a year ago or something. This was when Amy was leaving out. And it was a discussion and it was kind of stated that there was never nothing really in place and that moving forward, they wanted to put something in place.
Okay.
And this was when, like, in the exit of Amy, she was still working at,
Mhm.
but she had already put her notice in and stuff.
I think it's similar to the way she had also recommended that we redo the TIFA plan because that had not been done in some time and that has on the back burner just because we haven't gotten to it. But those are the kind of things that needed some upkeep. And I think this needs to be another rebuilding year where we, get those things in order.
So this document was reviewed by both our new HR firm and Nelson.
It was actually prepared by the HR firm for us and Nelson, yes, has looked at it also.
Okay, so he signed off on it.
Mhm.
Any other questions or discussion?
Should we clarify when it would go into effect? I'm sorry, that's a question. I'm just thinking if I were a board member, I'd be looking for. Kevin, do we know when it goes into effect?
I would say it goes into effect as soon as approved by the board.
I'm guessing immediately, but it says November 23 at the bottom. So I'm going to presume it would be today.
My understanding would be it would go into effect immediately. That was the promise we made to the board was to get something going, get it in place.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep, correct.
If I hear no other discussion, may I ask for a vote?
I will say Nelson has his hand up.
Nelson has his own. Okay. All right. Good morning, Nelson. If you can hear us, I understand that you have your hand up, would like to make a comment.
And thank you for recognizing that I was here.
Yes.
I recommend that the motion, if you can hear me, I recommend that
So
the
Nelson,
motion.
apparently we can't hear you yet, so hold on.
Okay. So, Kevin, are you online? Can you hear us?
Yes,
and
I
if
can.
So, do you have any comments, around the associate handbook?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
We can see
Hello?
you, Nelson. We're still working on hearing you. Could you say something?
Can you hear me?
Nope, but thank you for asking.
I guess I can't see them.
There we go.
Try now?
Say something.
Say something, Nelson.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
No.
Okay.
Nope, not so much. Do you want to put it in the chat, or I don't know if the chat is allowed?
Good morning.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Nelson.
Can you hear
Clearly
me?
that's not Nelson on the phone because we're not seeing him talking.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
You
Okay.
can?
Nelson, there's an echo, so I'll get rid of the echo by calling you directly on your cell phone.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So, evidently he does have a comment.
Hey, Nelson, apparently we
Yes.
can talk. Yeah, I can talk to you, but they can't hear us in the conference in the boardroom.
And I got Jerome calling me, Kevin.
Richie, can I ask that we
for
table,
it.
because like I said, I need to leave here soon and we
So,
haven't even
Jerome?
discussed.
Go ahead, you're able to be heard by the gallery.
Okay, all I wanted to suggest is that the motion state that it is to be effective immediately, if that's the intent of the board, regardless of what's printed on the effective as of. So if the mover and supporter wanted to amend the motion to say effective as of the date of adoption of the motion, that would be a good thing.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much, Nelson. With that being said, I will call for a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me. Clark,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes,
3-1, the motion carries.
all right, and item number 7, to review and approve the 2024 Fund Brownfield Redevelopment Authority budget. Virgil, can we do both of these at the same time?
I was asking this year to approve all 4 in a separate motion, only because someone might have questions on some and not on others. And so in case we stumbled, I was hoping to do them
All right.
quickly, separately. Yeah.
All right, well, then let's do number 7 first. That being said, knowing Vicky is right on time.
Thanks for your help, Nelson, with that.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I'm glad to have that done.
Second.
Yeah,
I'm gonna leave.
So which one is?
This is the Brownfield, Fund 243, Brownfield Authority. This is the one that probably had the most discussion back and forth. So. But we need a second, I think.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you second, Vicky?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, I've heard a motion and a second.
So let me just do a quick overview of that budget. This is the one that is a flow through, if you will, for us. We receive money from the taxing authorities that we then would need to disperse to particular agencies, whether it be the developer or whether it be the brownfield itself for an admin fee, or whether it be the revolving loan fund. And it's all predicated on the plan documentation per project. So there's no cookie cutter here, so I appreciate there's been a tremendous amount of effort to review the flow of funds against the documents. We've had some subject matter experts come in. I do believe we have the budget correct. Essentially, it's this board's responsibility to make sure the flow of funds happens as the documents had been created. A lot of these projects, we have 2 open projects right now, and you know, they go past even most of us, predate most of us. So it's just a lot of effort to make sure that we're managing the projects to the documentation. So we'll get a certain amount of money in, we'll get a certain amount of money goes out, and the remainder essentially of some of those dollars will then flow over to the revolving loan fund for future use. And there's some limitations in the revolving loan fund, how those dollars get used. But essentially, it's very exciting for the city of Albion to have done these projects in the past, and now we're seeing the benefits of that because we can incentivize other developers to do more work.
So you have adjustments on the side here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I printed this morning because Mr. Clerk from the city office sent them over. So I was at my office printing these. So maybe I'll just circulate these. So you have a printed document instead of the adjusted. I didn't have anything else to disperse on Friday, so.
So Virgie, in this section, is there anything that the board should be concerned about?
No, I think a tremendous amount of work has gone into this, and I feel good about the brownfield budget.
Okay, this too is part of the city's budget and was time sensitive, so thank you. So we're working with the city in terms of meeting their timetable.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Their preliminary review of their budget is tonight, and it's been posted in the paper, and it's once a year, they have a very specific meeting to do this budget review, and so we're trying to make sure that we're in line with their needs.
Good. Okay, good, excellent. And you want to vote on these singularly, is that correct?
Just in case there's one that someone doesn't want to vote on, I just didn't want to hold the rest of them up.
All right.
So you have a motion and a second on just the brownfield right now.
Okay.
So in regards to some of the line items, like let's say the first line item, the current property taxes. And I usually look at the 21, 22, and then what we got currently going on with 23. We see a big jump for 24. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, so I would ask you to look at 2 line items together. And that would be the current property tax item and the transfer in line. And I don't have a calculator in front of me, but 130,000 plus 120 is about 250. And then if you look over on the budget line, the line item for the same, it's 200 plus 225. So it's really 225. In the past, the way the prior EDC director and finance director operated, they used that transfer in line and that current property tax to split up summer and winter, for example, or project by project. And in all reality, you could almost put it all on one line. So I think of it more as combined. So the change isn't really that large. In fact, it's a small decrease. So the reason for that is we have one project that's on the downslope and one project on the upslope. And so it will change accordingly based on the projects. But I look at those two as unified as opposed to looking at 2 separate line items. So that's why you see kind of differences there. I will tell you that the 200,000 is relative to the Marriott and the 25,000 is relative to Brick Street Lofts. So this year I put the 2 projects on the 2 line items so we could speak to them, in a more meaningful way.
So which one's on the, are you saying that the lofts are on the up?
So so somewhere along the way, when you make a change, something looking backwards is not gonna line up. I think the way Tom and Amy did it was they used the current property tax line item for winter taxes. And they used the transfer in for summer. I don't know why, and I kind of have to stop wondering about that. But what I can tell you is the 200,000 is for the Marriott and the 25,000 is for the Brick Street lofts. So we will receive into the brownfield 25,000 from the DDA. And essentially that 200 is actually also coming in from the DDA, but because it's been such a laborious conversation, I didn't want to continue to go down that road right now. They're all property taxes. They're all coming in from the DDA because that's the way they're flowing because the current projects are all downtown. So, but because it's part of a bigger budget and, you know, I'm just trying to do as well as I can. I did produce a memo on this topic and, you know, I do think at some point it'd be great to have Triterra come in and maybe do, an open like training meeting or discussion on how these work so that so we have more people, you know, discussing and understanding because good Lord willing, we're gonna have a couple of these a year moving on out. So it would be good to have, you know, everyone on the same page.
So you're saying that in reality or logistically, that the transfer in and the current property tax lines are basically one and the same?
They really should probably be all transfer ins because I believe they're all flowing in from the DDA. But I don't want to hold the budget process up because I know there was concern, you know, here at the city about how we're using these line items. I know it's frustrating. I know it's been difficult. I know the numbers are correct. If it were me, I probably would have it all in the transfer in line because it's all coming through the DDA. So it's a flow of funds issue. If we had a brownfield plan that was sitting out in the industrial park or sitting out on the edge of town and it wasn't in the downtown development authority, then the monies wouldn't flow through the DDA. They would flow through, you know, right directly into the brownfield. You have to go back to all the documentation and the interlocal agreements to really be able to speak to the flow of funds. But it's been a trying time to line this up, but in the end, I think we have the right numbers. It wouldn't bother me if they were all in the transfer in, but I don't want to go to bat for that and hold the budget up anymore. It can always be amended, but I know the numbers are right. The 25,000 in contractual services is the estimate or placeholder for the amount of the fee that would go out to the developer for Brick Street. And then on down, see the transfer out of 200,000. That's the estimate amount that would go to the revolving loan fund from the Marriott. So the simple explanation is 200 in from Marriott, 200 out to the revolving loan fund for future use, 25 in for Brick Street lofts, 25 out to the developer. And there's some administrative fees and such too, but this is essentially the big numbers and I feel comfortable we could work within the budget. I hope that helps.
Any other question? May I call for a vote?
All those in favor?
You probably need to take a roll.
Or is this a
call.
roll call because it's financial?
Yeah.
Who'd we start with? Snyder,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to item number 8, to review and approve the 2024 fund for the 244 economic development budget. We've committed for a 10-minute conversation on this. Virgie, you want to give us the details around this?
So do you have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second, thank you. This is Fund 244, so this is really our operational fund for the EDC. So as you review the line items, you'll see salaries and you'll see the other costs that it takes to run the Economic Development Corporation. If you have any questions on specific line items, I'm happy to go over it. What I'd like to highlight is that there's $1 million budgeted for federal grants because we did the EDA grant proposal. We would hope that some of that would come to fruition, so we have $1 million placeholder there. We have a $3 million state grant proposal. Those are dollars that are coming in either through MISTA, through the programs we're already doing, because we haven't really received much of that funding yet. So we know it will happen in the next year. So we'll continue to apply for grants to be able to bring those dollars in. That's about $1 million of that. The other $2 million of that state grant is money that we would hope that we would come from the strategic fund of the state. Again, why it's in the state fund bucket for land accumulation at the industrial park east side of town. So to offset those revenues down in the expense categories, you'll see contractual services of $1.3 million. We would assume that that would encompass some of the work that is being done for MISTA or some of the other work being done on that federal grant. And then we also see we have $1.5 million for land accumulation and $0.5 million for land improvements. We have those in this line item because that would encompass the $2 million that we have in the state line item from the strategic fund. So obviously, if we don't move forward on land accumulation and improvement in the industrial park, then we wouldn't spend the land accumulation dollars, and we also wouldn't have the strategic fund monies. So those are like the big items that are very, very new for us this year that we haven't seen before. And then the rest is pretty standard. There's a summary of the budgets. There's a memo here, and it kind of outlines the staffing model and which departments cover which staffing models. I think I've distributed that in the past, but if anybody wants to see it again, because we will be beginning to hire for those positions January 1, once we have the budget approved and we know the funding mechanism. So we won't be hiring if we don't have the funds, but this encompasses the staffing model that's been presented.
But is part of that staffing model contingent on these?
Not all, actually, because there are dollars here to be able to accomplish. So for example, the $1 million in one of the $1 million amounts in the state line item are the MISTA grants we've already been awarded. And because they haven't approved all of our processes yet, we haven't even spent any of that money. So we won 2 awards, and the total is $1 million, and we'll have to spend that in the next year. So we only have 1 position slated to cover that. That's an operational role, which we get a percentage for. And then the rest of that 1.3, a good share of that $1 million is going to be part of that MISTA money. So we'll only spend based on programming. If we have the money, we spend the money. But the staffing itself has been set up to be able to be accomplished through either the sale of properties or digging into this year's fund balance. Remember, we sold $500,000 worth of property this year. And of course, we didn't use that. We knew we were going to use it for rebuilding. We knew we were going to use it for future staffing and to get off the ground. So there will be in the budget memo, you'll see where if we aren't able to accomplish all the staffing with current inflows, we would dip into prior fund balance, because we're leaving. If you look at 23 projected, we're leaving a substantial amount of money, $384,000, that net revenues over expenses that we would be able to dip into to cover operational for this year. So any of that would be clearly outlined as we actually hire staff, and it takes time to hire staff. So we have the staff models in for 12 months, and that's not likely. We wouldn't hire everybody on the first day of the year.
Any other questions? May I call for a vote?
Well, I just have one more
Yes.
question.
Oh, sure.
The current contractual services,
Yes.
we are to date at 10,000, is that correct? When the budget is for 3,500? contractual service line item 244728802.
So I think what you're referring to is whether we need to amend the budget to close out the 2023 year. That would probably be a different discussion than,
No, I'm just asking, is that number correct? Are we that much over? And do you know why we're that much over?
so the 2023 10,000 is a projected number.
That's projected activity.
For 23, that's what you're asking about. It looks like the actual at the end of October is $5,763.
Yep, yep.
And the budget was $3,500. So the delta is probably not as large as what you're seeing, but that 10,000 looks like it was a projection for the end of 23.
So we only got like one more month. So did David say why he thinks it's gonna be that much money?
So this year to date, so I'm sorry, this year to date is as of the end of October, so you really have,
Okay.
one could argue you have 2 months left. One of the things about the process that when we do this budget is some of the numbers are me numbers and some of the numbers are David numbers, and I don't want to speak for David. I don't know whether this was one that I gave him or one that he proposed. So I think in the future, we just need a different method to share our input so that we're able to answer those questions. I very well have put that number in because I'd rather put a projection and that's higher than lower. But right now, looking at it, I'd have to go back and see how he and I came up with that number. But I doubt we have bills sitting around that need to be paid at that level. But all things are new and we're doing a lot of things differently. For example, Tequela's on a contract as opposed to an employee. So it easily could be that I was either he or I, and again, I don't want to speak for him. We could have been thinking, well, we see a little uptick here. Maybe that's where that's going to be. One, if this board would like to do a 23 amendment that would shore up the buckets of spending, this board has done that in the past. I haven't even had time to start thinking about that yet, but that may be something this board would want to do, is to do a budget amendment as we get closer to the end of 23 to shore up these numbers. I quite frankly spent a lot more time on the 24 budget than I did on the 23 projection.
And I guess similar question with the line item above it, professional services. The 23 budgets for 3,500. Year-to-date activity at the end of October, 77,862. And then again. So I don't understand.
So you could, well, so I think you're asking questions that really belong in a discussion around a budget amendment for 23. I think I believe we're working on the 24 budget. One of the things that the previous treasurer, and I guess you could ask the current treasurer, I'm sorry, I'm probably speaking for you, Vicky, and I didn't mean to be. The previous treasurer and I had conversations about if a line item is high here but low there, are we concerned about it? And the answer was no.
Mhm.
So the answer was we need to do a shift as we close out the year and true up the budget to actual so that you don't see those big swings and wonder, hey, what's happening? The other thing you could do is just look at the net. So if you're looking at the FY 23, I would probably spend a lot more time looking at the net of the budget versus actual, and you'll see that we're right on target budget versus actual. In fact, we're underspent. So overall, we're underspent because we didn't kick off some of the programs, we didn't hire some of the people, we didn't do some of the things we wanted to do. We had a situation this summer where a lot of forward progress was stilted. So in prior to that, prior to my leaving, Scott Evans, the prior treasurer, and I had conversations that essentially we're all looking at overall numbers, and that we're at some point we would do a budget amendment for 23 to clean up the end of the year. But that would be a whole different discussion. Happy to put something together, but probably shouldn't hold up the 24 budget approval.
No, I get it. But that's just a huge number at the year to date at the end of October. $77,000. Do we have a sense of where that where that money,
I hear the question. I'm not ready to answer that today because I don't have it with me, but I don't know that you're being fair because there are other line items that shift the other way.
no, I get it.
So I feel like I hear what you're saying, and for transparency, I understand. You want me to stop? Oh, I understand for transparency, but I just think we're headed down a rabbit hole in the wrong meeting.
Okay.
So I'm happy to look into some of those, but again, the previous treasurer had said, as long as we're to balance overall, that's not an issue.
So then I guess for the proposed 24 number, we have 75,000. Is there a reason why we're going that far out? Is that because of the grant?
So we have intentions and program intentions that would consume those dollars. A lot of it has to do with land accumulation and the work we're doing out at the industrial park. So we have specialized professionals that we are bringing in to help with the land accumulation particularly. So if you're asking about the 75,000 for contractual or professional, sorry, for professional fees, you're asking about the 75,000. So those would be specialized professional fees that we need to accomplish the growth strategy for next year.
If there are other questions, I'll call for a vote. Burgess?
Harvey,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Moving to item number 9. The review and approval for the 427 tax increment finance authority budget. Want to take us through that one?
We just need a motion to approve.
May I have a motion to approve?
And I lost my agenda. Okay, motion to approve was Clark. A second was Snyder. Was that you?
No, yeah, I'm
Okay.
trying to find the TIFA, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm shuffling papers. So we should be looking at 4 of 5. Thank you.
Or,
Thank you.
So it's 4 and 5 and 5 and 5, or 3 and
So-
5, excuse me.
So I'm just gonna stay on page 4 of 5 for
Yep.
now. Again, this is somewhat of a bifurcated account. Half of, some of the money that comes in from property taxes, that 108,000 you see. Those are tax properties that are at the industrial park, so the TIFA that are part of that program come in for operations. We also have the local community stabilization monies. I will tell you in this, and again, happy to continue to converse with David about these, but those 2 numbers are numbers that he gave me. And I haven't been able to backtrack those yet, so I trust that they're accurate. So he's given me those numbers. Then we have interest, and then we know we're going to have sale of property because we already have some in the works, and so we'll have revenues from sale of property. And then because of the arrangements in the TIFA, we do cover a certain amount of salaries and operations, but it's really the amount of salaries that are dedicated to the incremental, to the industrial development. I've increased the amount of the CEO's salary that goes to the TIFA because the emphasis is to be on that industrial park this year. So even though we haven't had our full-fledged goal setting, my proposal will be that we put a lot of effort into that industrial park. And so I've transferred a fair amount of the CEO salary over to this fund rather than the EDC fund, which allows us to do marketing and growth in other areas based on the 10-point Blue Oval plan. So I'm trying to be a steward of where the dollars are coming from for certain salaries. And so we've realigned. It hasn't been realigned in a number of years, but we believe this is right now.
Vicky, do you have a specific question in this TIFA budget?
I didn't perceive that, no. So that was my overview, yeah.
Okay, well, I was kind of asking whether there was any specific, Ms. Clark, you have any specific question in the TIFA budget? Without further discussion, can I call for a vote?
Snyder,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
All right, let's move to the revolving loan fund budget, item number 10. May I ask for a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Support, I've got motion and support, discussion?
I alluded to this earlier. This is the first year in many, many years that we are having an increase in this fund. So this is very exciting for us, and that 200,000 is that estimated amount coming in from the incremental tax from the Marriott that in the past has been used to pay off the developer and other fees, but we're at the point in the contract where we get to accumulate these into the local revolving fund. That local revolving fund is managed by a board. We recently have put that board, some new members on that board, and they're meeting, I think, next week because we're working on a particular project. But we are increasing the funds available to be eligible to go out to, we hope that we have entrepreneurs or people in the city that are looking for incentives to be able to get started on some businesses. So that this is where those would come from. The trick on, tricks not, well, I'm gonna say the trick on these funds is we just have to keep an accounting of the type of projects that they can support. And so we just have to be careful about the compliance. Some revolving loan funds can be used for X type projects, and some are more narrowly defined. This 200 will be more narrowly defined based on the documentation that precluded the deposit. So we just, from a compliance perspective, it'll be important to make sure that as we loan these dollars out, they get loaned to the type of development that was being promoted at the time. So these are great planning tools for us to be able to have future development. And this revolving loan fund is that part of our budget that manages those available dollars for local. So I don't have the balance sheet here because I know we don't budget the balance sheets here, but I think we have 350,000 or so available. So this will increase to 550,000 available.
Any other questions or discussion?
Roll call, Clark,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
passes 3-1.
May I have a motion to excuse those absent members?
So moved. Did we get from trouble?
I did hear from him about over the last week or so, he's tied up with business.
And of course,
And
Yes.
Ben called this morning that he was detailed, yeah.
Vicky, may I have a second, or did I not hear you second?
I support.
Support.
I just want to make sure we actually heard.
Had heard, yeah.
So moved in second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
We move to public comments. There's no one in the gallery. Is there any comments from our Zoom audience?
We can hear.
Couldn't
No,
hear.
I think they're-
Right. All right,
Okay.
Thank you for
we-
being here.
Good day.
stand adjourned.
Thank you. The meeting was adjourned at, someone have a
8:26.
26.